In this episode of the SLO County Real Estate Podcast, Hal goes over some key economic indicators that point to an eventual decline in interest rates, which is great news for all the people that have been shoved to the sidelines. But you'll want to get ready. The team also talks about Cal Poly and its impacts on the market from a desirability standpoint. Get ready to jump back into the market. Here's your host, James Bueno.
SLO County Real Estate with Mr. Hal Swayze. How are you, sir?
Mr. James Bueno, I am great.
Well, great. Thank you. And JT, you're back again.
Mr. Bueno, I'm good.
Me too. Yeah. Jay, how are you, sir?
I'm doing phenomenal. No play on the Bueno.
Nope. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Mr. Kingman, you're there.
I'm doing excellent.
You're there. You're here. You're with us.
I'm happy to be here.
You know, can you believe we were just having a conversation earlier about a Christmas party? Christmas is almost here. Everything's going by so fast. Things are changing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're going to talk about some changes possibly, right?
Yeah. Interest rates, because in real estate, it's so interest rate sensitive. What's the Fed going to do? Which way are they going to go? Stocks, they affect so many things in the economy, and real estate certainly is one of them. I read an interesting financial article, and I've heard people in the mortgage industry talk about this concept, but I thought I would share it because I think it finally got simple enough where I can explain it and understand it. So they talk.
Yeah, I want to hear this.
The consumer price index, I think, is one of the things that folks at the Federal Reserve Bank, they look at that. Mm-hmm. And when it's going up steeply, we get nervous. We don't want prices to go that high. We put a tamper on inflation. So we've seen how many months since rates went up? Last year, 15, 18, 20 months now?
Well over 12 months. Yeah.
12 months was March, April, right?
Yeah.
So those rates have been raised to lower the cost of things and tamp down demand, I guess. Is that one way of saying it? Is that fair for you guys?
Trying to hedge inflation. They're trying to keep
the prices from going too high. So the consumer price index is a basket of things that they say, okay, bread, bananas, whatever. But the biggest one, the simple part, is 40% of it is housing. That's the biggest component of any input they use when measuring consumer prices. So if houses go up 50%, that's a good portion of the CPI. Everything else could be going down, but that'd be a big inflation number. It's interesting because shelter is the only inflation category where you can look at what happened a year ago and what's coming next month. It's calculated based on something called owner's equivalent rent, which is basically not what the house costs, but what would it be for rent. So they're going to look at rents. But they look at rents because rents are usually locked in for at least a year or sometimes more. So when they go back to August of last year, if someone was leasing a property and they were leased at a certain level that year, that's what they look at, even though in the past 12 months, the rents might have gone down. Now, here they haven't so much. So the point of this is it creates a lag before it shows up in our consumer price index. So we're still using current numbers for all the other 60% of what's in that CPI basket, but that 40% is based on a year ago.
Wow.
And it was higher then. They said, when rents slowed down dramatically, we were stuck, even though rents have dropped since that point nationwide. Now, here locally, we're kind of immune to that. We haven't seen rents drop.
Not here.
Not at all.
Probably up. No. But this is nationwide. So the Fed's not going, we're going to base our decisions on what happens in San Luis Obispo. Yeah, they look at the whole country, which is probably smart. So what they've done is they've looked at this and goes, yeah, we can tell that rents not only are not increasing as much, because when we hear about decreases in inflation, they're talking the rate of inflation. Like I think last year, and I'm going to throw some numbers out, and please correct me, is like we were up like 8 or 10%.
We got as high, we got over 9, right?
Over 9%,
Yeah.
which was a difference.
That was the
years.
highest mark I remember.
Yeah, so that means over that year they went up 9 or 10%, and we saw it in lots of things. Anybody that buys anything knows that. So now the rate of increase over last year is less. Okay, that's still inflation, but less inflation.
This week, the CPI came out for August, and it was 3.7, which was up a little bit above July.
So if rents have been softening throughout the country earlier in this year, it might take 3 or 4 months before they go, oh, now rents are, they've come down because the new lease amounts in many parts of the country are lower. So they are saying in this article, shelter could end up, and when they say shelter, which is housing of that 40%, in deflation next year. Okay, so now you take 40% of it, and it's a negative number instead of a smaller.
That 3.7 will be something much smaller then, is what
it would be
what
negative.
They're predicting.
Yeah.
Well, no, not the whole thing would be negative. The shelter part would be negative, so that it would bring down the 3.7.
Absolutely.
And I read the same article. I thought they said around 2. which was the target they set when inflation was running away at 9 last year.
Right.
Right.
And their point is it could be there now, but it won't show up in the numbers until likely next year. This is a lot of, economic who knows what knows, but it seems to make sense, right? So that would lead us to believe what some of these mortgage people have been saying, that it looks like rates, specifically mortgage rates, could be lower next year. So what happens if rates get down to where they were 12 months ago, maybe 5.5%, 6% for mortgages? For us, what does that mean for real estate?
More activity.
Yeah, absolutely. There's going to be buyers that qualify. There's going to
Yeah.
be sellers that have been wanting to get out of their house and make their next move, and they don't feel like they're trapped by their low interest rate. You're going to see movement. You're going to see freed up inventory. You're going to see buyers that can come off the fence and start closing.
Yeah.
So we'll see quite a bit of activity if that happens.
It would be interesting because I really think the inventory might get up to more normal levels because
Yeah.
people would be willing to sell that are in their houses, and they didn't want to jump from 3 to 6, but they can do the jump from 3 to 5.
Sure.
And they have more choices. You don't want to sell your house because there's nothing to look at. As real estate brokers, it's nice because it means more volume. For first-time buyers, it's a good thing, because now I can get more house for my money, but I may be competing a little bit more because if more buyers jump in, we know how quickly that can shrink our inventory in this close-knit little place.
You work primarily on the supply side because you're working with sellers, and I probably spend more of my time with your salespeople that are on the demand side. So what do you think is going to happen on the demand side next year if we see a 5 or less? I'm rooting for less.
Yes. Well, certainly it's going to bring buyers back into the marketplace. As rates start to go up, people jump in.
Yeah.
Right? Because we better get, they're going up, and that happens with prices, and so when they go down, sometimes there's that lag and people don't figure it out and don't grab it when the opportunity kind of arises. Again, it's that shorter term mentality, which is hard to fight. Our last episode, we talked about intergenerational transfer of wealth. Thank gosh, grandma and grandpa bought a house or bought an apartment building, whatever, and here it is for us 20, 30, 50 years later. So it's just getting into the marketplace. But my sense would be, if what this says is true and it makes sense to me, barring some other big spike in the cost of everything, that could affect the CPI. The biggest one we're looking at is housing, and that's on a downward path, which is going to be good for interest rates.
Getting away from the macro and more on the micro, and when I say that, I mean home prices here in San Luis Obispo County. If we see a 5%, 5.5% rate in early 2024, what do you guys think that'll do to prices?
Well, every 1% in mortgage rate difference makes a 10% difference in the price of the house. So if it drops, it's 10% more affordable. So, it doesn't take many people to add to the 285 houses we have for sale. If you bring in 30 new buyers that were not buyers 3 months prior, plus all the regular buyers, guess what?
There's more competition.
So what would you tell a first-time buyer?
Well, we were talking about this earlier. Inflation means that I have to pay more for food. So I either pay, instead of my $200 or $500 a month budget, I can do that and raise it because I like steak every week, or I can go, I got to keep my budget and I'm not having steak except once a month and I'm going to have some top ramen. So you have to lower your expectations of what you buy. I would say, look at where you rent. What are you paying in rent? Look at what you can afford, James. Look at what you can afford. And sometimes you might have to just get into a house that's going to be maybe not as nice as you like.
Yeah, first-time home is usually not the one that you dreamed about. It's your foot in the door. And then you get to not only have a place to live where your cost of living is fixed, right? You're not having to worry about the tenants raising your rent. The landlord's raising your rent next year. You've got a fixed cost for a couple of years. You're going to get that appreciation. And then you can continue to save for your next house.
Yeah.
That, coupled with appreciation, is going to give you the lever you need to get into your next house. It will take you 4 times longer to save without that lever of appreciation. So just get in. It doesn't really matter if it's the house you want. Maybe it's not even a house, it's a condo. Get the appreciation.
Yeah, I would say just get educated.
Make sure your FICO score is in great shape. If not, work with a mortgage professional to figure out what you got to do to get it there. And then focus on that's another big thing. You've got to have FICO score to get the best rate. So see what you can do. Talk to a lender today.
As we rolled through 2020 and COVID into 2021, what did we kind of surprisingly see? prices escalating as quickly as we've ever seen it, haven't we? I mean,
absolutely.
we've seen some pretty steep increases at a time or two in our lives, but this was a big one. So if you owned a house in 2020, you probably by 2022 experienced a 20% on the low side
Plus.
increase in value, maybe as much as 40.
Yep.
So when you were the first-time home buyer in 2020 and you're sitting on the sidelines and you weren't getting ready and you kept going, yeah, I want to buy a house, I want to buy a house, I want to buy a house. By the time it got to 2022, you were going to pay 20 to 40% more for that house. Are we at that place now? If interest rates go down, we're going to see double-digit increasing in prices?
I think a lot of that demand was COVID demand too.
Okay.
So you had good rates. I want a bigger house. I'm moving out of the area. I'm getting close to my family. I think there was just a lot more movement than normal, but I never, ever predict 15 to 20% annual increases. It's just not in my radar. And it becomes great for those who are involved, but I would never have guessed that. I mean, I'm happy if something goes up 2, 3, 4%, but I'm even happier if my payment stays the same for 20, 30 years.
But I guess I'm circling back to the comment that I made a second ago, and that's to the first-time home buyer, and I'm looking at him.
Yeah.
Get ready, man. Get ready.
You know, I bought a house in Visalia a long time ago.
Okay, second time.
Yeah.
First time in a while home
If
buyer.
it's been more than 3 years, you're still considered first-time home buyer.
No, I paid $98,000. It was 3 bed and 2 bath.
Yeah.
Babe.
3544 Roosevelt.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, get ready again.
It's interesting. I mean, I just moved and I gave up. I have a mortgage on my home and I gave up 3%, and I'm at 6.75 or something like that. I have a sense that I'll be able to refinance that or buy it down or whatever.
That's called my wife wanted to move more than I did.
Yeah, but I was ready at that time.
Okay.
Because I'm the stingy
We're not going to blame it all on Maria, huh?
No.
Okay.
No. So we'll be keeping an eye on interest rates, but it sounds like, and some of this was from the Federal Reserve notes, they talk about this sort of thing, that they've done a little, they map it out on their little computer systems, and it appears that that biggest component is going to be dropping. So that will be real helpful for CPI and a positive news for lower interest rates.
I think in San Luis specific, we're still going to have you call it the COVID factor. Like people were moving out of the cities because they wanted fresh air and mobility. People are still going to be moving to San Luis from outside the area, especially with you've got that transfer of wealth. You've got the ability, if you're over 55, to bring your tax basis with you in the state of California. If see a lot of people transferring here from other
Love those senior discounts.
How many people can't stand living in the big cities right now? I mean, it's.
I wouldn't.
If I had my choice, I would get out of there.
I have a timeshare in the city, and I don't go as often as I used
Right,
to.
I can imagine.
Is that Frisco?
The city.
The city.
The city. And it's not Frisco. It's
San Fran?
That's good.
not San Fran, brother. It's the city.
That's going to get edited out. Jeez.
Hey, Hal, what impact do you think, you talk about COVID impacting this area, and, we've talked endlessly about how we all love this area. But what impact has Cal Poly had on this market, do you think?
Oh, well, I mean, 32 years of talking to people, how did you end up here? One of the biggest reasons, one way or another, Cal Poly. Came here, niece or nephew was here, came here as a kid, saw it, went to Cuesta one year, wanted to come back, I mean, and then if you think about it, I guess there's not 20, there's 20,000 kids at a time at Cal Poly. So each
I think
class
there are more than that.
Easily more than that.
or
20, I think it's 22 or 24 now.
Well, you work with
Jeff,
the plug team, but 5,000 or 6,000 new kids coming in every year. For a small town, that's a big draw. It's like having a mini Disneyland here, and people come and go, but in a great place. We've got a lot of alumni friends that I know they want to come back. It creates customers, so to speak, for San Luis Obispo. And so you got 40,000 people, just their parents and nephews and friends, coming every year at least just because of a new class.
Wow.
Then you put in Cuesta, right? And so talk about a great marketing plan. And those people go, geez, we came to dropped our kid off at school. We didn't want to leave.
Questa's up to 10 or 12,000 students, aren't they now?
Really? Yeah.
So we got over 30,000 students in this community.
Undergrad is 21,000.
Okay.
Right.
So, yeah.
So if you try to-
some more grad students, probably about 5,000 or
Yeah.
6,000. on top of that.
And that's just the students, right? So
Right.
got faculty.
So I got more faculty and
coming,
people working on campus.
You've got the hot houses. You've got people that are, development director, fundraising, athletic, all these things. So the university is just a showcase for this community.
I went to Washington State University. People would go there and they're like, oh, yeah, it's nice college town. And the discussion would start and stop there. It's a nice place to go to college.
Yeah.
Right.
I've never heard anybody say that about San Luis Obispo and Cal Poly and the surrounding area. People are like, well, I got to figure out how to get here.
Yeah.
I've heard that numerous times. And all because their kid chose to go to school at Cal Poly. And
Or a nephew, a
Yeah,
sister,
right.
I did like some of my good friends.
Some-
My brother went to school here and I came here and I went, well, this is where I want to end up. And then you got all the visitors from everywhere. So I think it's true. I mean, it just brings so many people,
it does.
right?
My favorite little watering hole in Cayucas is a place called Beach Bums. And when I go in there and meet the people that are in there, my kids went to Cal Poly or I went to Cal Poly, one of the two.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't just impact San Luis, it impacts every city in the county.
Yeah, it provides a lot of exposure. So it's a phenomenal place. And then you've got so much. You got the Performing Arts Center stuff going on. You've got athletic things going on, events. It really adds a lot to the community, as much as every once in a while somebody bumps into a college kid and, most of us probably were one at one time or not, but we're just children. But it brings so much here and it affects real estate.
Funny story. The guy I used to work for in Pullman at the radio station, I told him, hey, I had a job interview in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And I told him, I said, I'm going on this job interview in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And he started saying, well, we got two, because up there, the University of Idaho and Washington State are right next to each other. We got two universities here. There's a lot of culture here. He's trying to get me to stay and be there. And I said, well, here's another thing I didn't tell you. I have the following week, I have a job interview in San Luis Obispo. And he looked at me and he said, all right, well, you're done. Because he knew about the area.
Right.
He knew how nice the area was. And he knew there was no chance that, for a quality of life standpoint, like Grand Rapids, he thought he had a chance. But going up against San Luis Obispo, no chance.
If you can figure out how to get here and stay here.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
You know what? An interesting stat. San Luis has one of the highest underemployment rates in the nation.
What does that mean?
More college graduates are working at Starbucks or
Sure.
just because once they get here they don't want to leave. They got their degree in engineering, the first degree in political science, and they just don't want to go anywhere. They
Got
don't
my MBA, so I'm tending bar.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to leave.
Yeah.
Oh, I had a college degree here and worked in the Bay Area, had a corporate sales job, came back and started in real estate, was starving. So I was bussing tables at the inn at Morro Bay in the morning, it felt like a step back, but it's like, I guess this is what I got to do, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and so, but
I get it.
that lends to the unaffordability conversation. Like, how does someone that lives here afford a house? Like, if you're working at Trader Joe's in the afternoons and waiting tables in the evening, you can't afford to buy a house, and yet you got 2 degrees. So
well, there's always a way. Well, no,
Got to have people, good parents helping you out.
Yeah, or I don't know. We're so used to, and again, I'm not recommending this. What was it like when people used to have boarders in their house? They couldn't afford to stay in their house.
Sure.
What if you went in with 4 of your friends?
Well, I've talked to James about
And
this house hacking.
share.
Buy a house and rent one of your rooms
Yeah, or
out. It'll help
share
you
it,
offset the mortgage.
And again, I'll say it again, I'm not doing that.
When the
Conversion
first of
garage
your
you
2
need, yeah.
boys is ready to buy a house,
Yes,
what are the odds that mom and dad are going to help them in some way or fashion?
they're high.
Yeah, because otherwise they won't be able to buy a house,
Maybe.
right?
Maybe.
Maybe. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, the only way my son was able to get in is we helped him.
Right. And yeah, I wasn't in that position as a young person, and many people aren't. Many people are, but I also think it's robbing them a little bit of the value of trying to figure it out. Yeah. If there'd be anything, it'd be helping with real estate.
Don't worry about robbing them. Just help them a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Dad.
Your dream home is rarely going to be your first home. If you're a first-time home buyer, get in the game sooner than later. Don't wait.
I was so on last week's episode when you were talking about the young couple that just graduated from Cal Poly and how you're helping them with their first. Wish I could go back and do things differently when I was hearing you tell that part of the story. If we never would have had kids, I don't think we would have entered into buying a house.
Right.
I think we would have rented.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until we had kids, we're like, oh, we're going to have to do something for them in the future, and we have to build our wealth. What's the best way to do it? And that's through buying a house. Our costs went up because we had a sweet rental deal, but we knew that that was the best thing to do and just change the way we spend money a little bit.
Remember this one, the kids who live in the house that the parents own have higher test scores.
That's what
So you did a good job for your kids, man.
Well, okay, so that's good advice then. So if we have a first-time buyer that's on the fence, a couple of some sort, we'll just say, well, just go have a baby and come see me.
My
But it's true,
Great
it's your
advice,
game.
yeah.
I mean, I
You
had
have to.
as an adult, if you're going to be an adult, when you have a kid, it's like, oh, now I'm an adult.
Yeah,
James, I think you need to get us out of here.
Yeah. On that note, all right, everybody. I'm not even going to ask you guys one or the other. Well, we're done today. Thank you for listening to the How Swayze podcast. Be sure to subscribe and rate this podcast. It comes out every Monday, so check for it in your feed for the latest information on the San Luis Obispo County market. The Slow County Real Estate with How Swayze podcast is available wherever you get your podcast and on howswayze.com, where you can find current listings and other real estate tips. Howswayze.com, that's HALSWEASEY.com. I am James Bueno, Director of Marketing for the How Swayze Group. If you're looking for anything real estate, give us a call, 805-781-3750.
Al Swayze is a licensed California real estate broker. DRE number 01111-911. The Slow County Real Estate with Hal Swayze podcast is a production of AGM Podcasts. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.